Test, 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 test. Test, test, test. Yeah, that's good. would you mind closing the doors, please? Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you. Good to be with you. Excellent that you're joining us if you're on Facebook or YouTube. We appreciate you tuning in and being in the space with us. Lots to get into this morning. If you're familiar with our Sunday morning service here at Unity at 8 a.m., we like to go into a deep inquiry into the nature of who we truly are. It's about looking at ourselves, and the message is really going to focus in on this direct seeing or direct looking into ourself this morning. In some traditions, it's referred to as self-inquiry. In the Christian contemplative tradition, it's referred to mostly as watchfulness. And then when we get into the Eastern approach, it's oftentimes referred to as like Vivekamarga, this idea of the way or path of discerning. In Buddhism, it's referred to as shamatha and vipassana, this calming down and insight into who we truly are. And so what you're kind of sussing out from all of that is that it is a universal method, and it's a necessary step, really the preliminary step into true self-knowledge and freedom from suffering. And that's really, I think, what drives us originally into a spiritual inquiry, is to look at ourselves so that we can see what's not working and rid ourselves of it, be free of it, somehow get rid of the past, the bondage, the old patternings, the blocks that oftentimes suffocate this tender seed that we have wanting to grow within us, this spiritual presence, this divine nature that we can feel oftentimes if we're quiet enough for even a moment to sense that there's something greater in ourselves that wants to express, that wants to emerge, that wants to be. And that's really where our love, that sense of love and belonging comes from. And because of our spiritual ignorance, our not looking, we are oftentimes mistaking this love and this longing to be and to belong with trying to find that in the world and in what A Course in Miracles refers to as special relationships, where we get into these relationship bargains or transactional relationships that basically are always set within the separation of the ego perspective, and yet we're trying to make the ego happy by being in this partnership. And if we've been alive long enough to know, at least through this experience of being in relationship, it doesn't really work out, because this transactional nature in relationships, it's always based on me first. Even if we're trying to do the right thing, even if we're trying to be the good person, the caring person, the giving person, if you've looked, inquired into what's really going on below the surface within yourself, you'll always realize that it's a me first transaction. And that very formula is the formula of suffering. And so to be free of that me first approach to life, to relationships, is really the first step in the spiritual awakening. And so this is what we do on a Sunday morning. We go directly into examining the me. And we're going to be doing that in spades this morning. So I hope you're up for that. And as you'll begin to recognize in the way that it was set up in the early part of this introduction, as we learn how to see through or cut through our own selfishness, our own self-involvement, our own narcissism, we actually feel lighter. We feel peaceful, we feel brighter, we feel more alive, we feel more able to engage in loving partnerships, because we'll begin to realize that what was in the way was the me. And as that me is dissolved through this spiritual practice, we realize we were not that me. It was only a role that we were playing. It was habitual conditioning. It was the way that we defined ourselves from the past. And now something else can intercede on behalf of reality and have us look differently at this me that we've been playing, this role that we've been playing all of our life. And that is freedom. That is happiness. That is the release of suffering. Okay? So we'll get into that. And keep in mind, we like interaction, so if you have thoughts or ideas or questions coming up throughout the talk, remember them. We'll have a few minutes left over at the end of the talk for any engagement that you would like to have and bringing greater clarity or understanding to your own practice. Okay? So as we enter into our conversation this morning, it's really vital that we calm the mind. Because one of the ways that we are very skillful at ignoring ourselves is being busy and staying within the monkey mind. And so we just want to attune to the breath, feel your attention go to the breath. Feel that inhale and exhale beginning to naturally deepen in a rhythm of free flow going through the breath current. If you feel you're gripped or hanging on, there's any tension, use the breath, and especially the exhale through the mouth, to release any tension, any resistance. And so with your eyes closed and your attention on just the breathing process, feeling it opening the heart, begin to feel a deeper sense of relaxation and calmness flowing through the breath all the way down into the tips of your toes and all the way up into the crown of your head. Breathe with your whole body. And relax. As we embark on our conversation together this morning, make a commitment to yourself to remain in this relaxed state. Whenever you feel an upsurge of stress or concern or anxiety, like an effervescent bubble, just let it pop, let it go, and maintain this calm abiding, this relaxed state of mind. And you'll notice as you continue to relax and become grounded in the breathing process, your mind naturally brightens. It's like the dust settles. And you shift from that busy beta wave brain state into a more receptive alpha wave brain state. And they know scientifically that when you're in this alpha wave, you're able to access these deeper regions of yourself. You're more open, more porous. And so you have the answers that you're seeking. It's just allowing them to come up, to surface in your awareness. And so make an intention that this will happen for you this morning. That you will feel the joy of answered prayer. And so it is. So to get things started this morning, I brought a book back that we've been looking at for the past couple of weeks. This is Mark Nepo's book on awakening. Thanks to Lisa, I have enjoyed the messages that this book has to share on Sunday mornings. And in the past, we've looked at some very interesting approaches that Mark takes, and today's no different. In this entry, it's entitled Looking Away. Looking Away. And he starts with a bit of prose from June Singer, which goes like this. In exchange for the promise of security, many people put a barrier between themselves and the adventures in consciousness that could put a whole new light on their personal lives. So I think what June Singer is getting at here is that sometimes we settle for a little life. We settle to be small. We settle for not looking at ourselves so that we can somehow have the little bit of comfort that we're getting or wanting in our life, instead of actually looking deeper within, finding out that we are much more than the little me that we've been pretending to be all of our life. And Mark follows up with this comment. The pull into the truth of things is very strong. Often the only way to resist this pull into truth is to deny what we are seeing, to pretend our lives do not have to grow or change. Yet when we do this, when we pretend that we don't have to grow or change, our spirit, which doesn't know how to pretend, keeps moving. For as the Isha Upanishad says, the spirit is swifter than the mind. We are then painfully like a dog at the end of its leash, staked and running at the same time, pretending we don't know any better. Interestingly, we tend to think of ignorance as an innocent not knowing. But the Buddhist teacher Chogyam Trungpa points out that to ignore someone or something is a willful looking away, a grave act of denying what is already conscious. Trungpa says, or rather Trungpa suggests, that the willful act of looking away is a crime against the essence of things that costs us dearly. When we find our spirit on the move, when we are pretending otherwise, the tension can be ripping. It leaves us all with the need to learn how to discern between an innocent not knowing and a willful looking away. So again, here's the path of discernment. There is a distinction between not knowing and a willful looking away. So keep that in the front of your mind. This is an inner knowing that can determine whether we live like a dog at the end of our leash or whether we will run free through the grasses of our life. Okay? So this idea of looking away is the very word that we have when we refer to it succinctly as ignorance. So ignorance is literally ignoring, willfully denying or looking away. And so what we oftentimes touch in on a Sunday morning is that you who are truly aware in this moment, that awareness is divinity itself. It's like you don't have to be different than who you are. You have to discover who you are. And the discovering of who you are will be your freedom. will be your joy, will be your bliss. But we've been so accustomed, so conditioned, so habitualized into looking away and identifying with our story, our suffering, our trauma, our desires, our unmet and unfulfilled wishes, that we have completely ignored the deeper self that is our freedom, that is our peace, that is our joy. So it's vital on this path of awakening that you begin to cultivate this willingness to directly look at yourself. And it's looking at yourself which at first can be very unsettling, very uncomfortable. As we'll see, we have a story to share from A Course in Miracles. If you're familiar with the two figures that brought the Course into publication, Helen Schuckman and William Thetford. It's a story about William Thetford, who was the colleague of Helen, both of them being psychologists. And because of engaging with this type of deep spiritual inquiry, Bill Thetford became resigned and depressed. He didn't know why. So he was we'll get into this a little more in detail, but just as a little touch in here, when the work began to really work in Bill's life, he felt like he couldn't face parts of himself and how he was in his past. And so because of the guilt or the shame or the self-loathing, he actually became passive and thinking that instead of looking, I'm just going to get resigned and not look and numb myself. And a lot of the times that is the path of least resistance that many of us will take. Even if we have this spiritual urge and we want to wake up, sometimes we even find ourselves in spiritual teachings that are more into distracting us than they are in focusing us on directly looking at ourselves. And so if you find yourself resigned or numb or sad or depressed, it's really perhaps if you're coming here and listening and doing this work, it's a sign that things are actually beginning to bubble up and surface in your awareness, and it's working through those dark nights of the soul that are so vital for your growing process. So the inner garbage, the inner denials, the inner shame, the anger, the self-loathing, it's there. We all carry it. Part of this path is being transparent and honest. And when we allow this deeper looking, the garbage, the self-loathing, everything that we don't want to look at, our shadow, has to come up. And if we're in a way of approach that allows for that possibility, we can actually go through it much quicker and much more efficiently. And in fact, as you calm your mind, your gentleness with yourself increases. When your mind is calm and resting in its deeper nature, it's strong. It's able to withstand all of the shame and the guilt and the pain that has been there for many decades in some cases. So that's why calming and relaxing is such an important first step, because you want to prepare the ground for the self-examination that will inevitably follow. Right? So looking at the ego can be a very harrowing experience, because the ego in our life has probably done some things that we're not proud of, or we've had things done to us that are really painful, and we don't ever want them to see the light of day again, and we repress them. But that's the leash around our neck. If we want to run free through the grasses of life, as Mark Nepo so beautifully put it, we have to take the leash off. And that leash cannot come off if we get into a relationship with somebody else who's on a leash. Do you see? Because if we're on a leash and we're being held back by our own self-loathing and our own self-limiting, it's like two egos never really meet. We can never really be in relationship with somebody who is not free when we're not free. And so this is what will oftentimes be the impetus for you to finally say, you know what, like we said last week, above all else, I want the truth. I want to be free. Whatever it takes, whatever it looks like, I'm ready. Because I know on the other side of this dark night or this harrowing experience, there lies the joy that I've been wanting all of my life. And so once you make that choice, you're no longer alone, as it says in A Course in Miracles. You'll have the spiritual assistance coming in through the master teacher, the Holy Spirit. And you'll often find that you're coming into community at the human level. And so you'll have reinforcement coming in through your human relationships that will steady you and help you and feed you and guide you when you need it and strengthen your walk. So how important it is not to continue to ignore, but to look, to directly see, and finally release what's been holding us back. So Mark Nepo mentioned, Chogyam Trungpa, Tibetan Buddhist teacher, passed away, I think, in 1986, was quite influential in the 1970s and early 80s, founded Naropa Institute in Colorado and the Shambhala teaching method. This is his talks that have been put into a book, The Path of Individual Liberation. So we just want to read a little bit from Chogyam Trungpa on cutting through the numbness of the ego. Okay, he's got some good things to share. So listen to this opening line here. The fundamental characteristic or essence of ego consists of ignoring your existence. Now, chew on that for a moment. The very essence of your ego, right? Now, when we talk about ego, I call my ego John. You call your ego by your name. And your name is your story and your biography and your experiences as the separate body self. So for most of us, the ego is all that we identify with. And what the essence of the ego is, according to this teaching, is ignoring your existence. So as long as you're playing the role of the separate self, you're ignoring, willfully ignoring who you really are. Right? That's a huge post on that road to awakening. Right? It's that image. Maybe you guys are. Some of you that are older like me know the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Just reminds me of that scene when, because John Candy was drunk and sleeping, and he got on the wrong highway. He's going in the wrong direction. And there's a car, a family, driving on the other side of the divider, trying to speed up and honking the horn and yelling at John Candy, "You're going the wrong way, you're going down the wrong side of the highway." And he's just, "Thank you." And he's ignoring the fact that he's going the wrong way. And that will only lead to disaster. But at that moment when he's being told he's going the wrong way, he's so self-assured that he knows where he's going. And actually goes like this to the people that are yelling at him that he's going the wrong way, like, "Yeah, there's something wrong with you. You're drinking a little bit. So you're off." So this is actually the kind of mentality that is not only willfully ignoring its own existence, but as we saw last week in that beautiful passage in A Course in Miracles, has invested enormous effort in maintaining the ignorance. As we had said just a moment ago, when you want to wake up, you're no longer alone. And then at the human level, you get with partnerships and relationships and community that will reinforce your spiritual growth and help you and bring more light into your life. Well, the opposite is true. If you're willfully ignoring your own existence, like does attract like. And you'll find that your relationships will be there as reinforcers for your spiritual darkness. Don't be surprised as you begin to sit and calm your mind and begin to look at these deeper layers of your psyche, your ego mind, that you begin to see the roles that other people have been playing that you've assigned them to maintain the ignorance, to maintain being distracted, right? When you have people in your life that are always making drama that you have to fix, fires that you have to put out, or attacking you and then you have to defend yourself and you guys are embroiled in something all the time, that's there by design, your design, as a way of willfully ignoring your own peace, your own existence, and instead distracting away within these relationships to strengthen the ego in you. Right? Chogyam continues, if you look at your existence, you see that it is full of tremendous pain. Even if you have a good marriage, even if you have pleasurable surroundings, even if everything is going right for you and all your external situations are excellent, there is still this me-ness, this I-ness, which, if you reflect on it, is ultimate pain. When you begin to realize that you do not exist as the ego, 100% of the pain is gone. That's a big statement. When you realize that you don't exist as the ego and you have developed your mindfulness and awareness, your whole identity shifts from being Mr. or Mrs. whoever to the one who is simply aware. The quality of ego pain may manifest as boredom with yourself. Listen to that. The quality of ego pain can manifest as boredom. He goes on, he says, you've been hanging out with yourself for 20 or 30 or more years, and you have become tired of yourself. That is only the apparent problem, however. Beyond that, there is the pain of carrying yourself around. It is as if you have this thing inside of you. You feel it as a part of you, your accessory garbage, but you love it and you can't get rid of it, right? And he means by that, you don't want to get rid of it. He refers to it as an old heirloom, like your garbage is precious, right? And you have to carry it around because it's who you are. You are your scars. You are your wounds. You are your trauma. You are the bad things that you've done. You are the bad things that were done to you. Sometimes you wish you could throw it away, but at the same time you would like to keep it because you regard it as a family heirloom. And then he says, there is a subtle sense of shakiness when you say I. Right? This is an important point now. He's going to make a distinction. So just follow him through this line of thought. If you just come up with the bareness of saying I, he says if you're really present with yourself and just looking at or feeling the sensation of this separate I, there's a bit of inherent shakiness in it, right? Uncertainty. No matter how you say I, there is a little tinge of frustration and unfriendliness. All your bad dreams are boiled down to one word, one syllable, I. All of your bad dreams are boiled down to I. And I'm going to continue with Chogyam in a moment, but just listen to the corollary in A Course in Miracles where he says it this way. The belief in hell is inescapable to those who have identified with the ego. Right? To those who say I as the separate I, you can't escape hell because that's your family heirloom. Hell is what you carry with you as your precious garbage. And then he says in the Course, their nightmares and their fears are all associated with I. Just like Chogyam was saying, all your bad dreams, all your nightmares, all your fears, all your anxieties, they all impinge on or come from saying I. So remember, when you come into this space, into this conversation, it is a direct looking, right? Not a looking away, not getting lost in ascended masters and metaphysical speculations. And as helpful as that may be sometimes to enliven your spiritual understanding, if you're doing that as a distractive way of going out and looking at other personalities or other mythic times and the crystals of Atlantis and all of these ways of approach that are external to you, that you have to get or acquire or attain, it's just a very clever distraction device. And on a Sunday morning, we shut all of that out. It's not that it's bad or wrong, but we go to the root. I only have an hour with you. I want to make this hour count in your life. And the way that I think it can count the most is if you go to the root of the issue. Look at the root and be free of it. And then you'll come out on the other side knowing your only problem was yourself. That was it. Saint Germain ain't going to help you when you're carrying around your garbage and insisting it's real and insisting it's you. That's not going to help you to think that, through that gateway in Orion, you'll be good. No, it's right here, the gateway of Orion. The ascension is right here. So again, this subtle sense of shakiness, frustration, unfriendliness towards yourself, boredom, right? All wrapped up in that separate I. Right? There is also another aspect of ignorance, a further aspect of I which is not so tentative. When you simply say I, you are tentative because you are embarrassed by your own ignorance, right? It's in your face. Really important and where he's going to go next. It's in your face. You know you don't know yourself. If you really look, right? If you really look, you don't know anything. I've shared before at the start of a Zen retreat, the Zen master actually said, when they check you into a sanitarium because they think that you may have had a psychotic breakdown, they have you fill out this questionnaire, like who are you, what's your name, what's your address, your date of birth, where you live, what month is it, what year, what country are you in, what's the name of the planet, etc. And as you go down all of these checklists and fill out the correct information, they determine whether or not you've had a psychotic break. Well, according to the Zen master in that talk, he says by answering everything conventionally, it's only an implication that you really are insane because you're none of those things and you're nowhere called America or Earth. This is all convention. It's all convention. It's all made up. It's all nominal. And so when you look directly at your eye, you don't know who you are. You don't know anything. You don't know where you are. You know, I've often said this too. It's like we're on the fringe of one of the galactic arms within this Milky Way galaxy that's 100 million light years across. And there are approximately 200 billion galaxies in this vast sea of cosmic existence. Where is that? Where's up and down in that? So this is what you get present to, right? Once you realize you don't know, and you're on shaky ground, then you can start to know. Then you can start to wake up. So again, not to belabor this, but he says, when you simply say I, you are tentative because you are embarrassed by your own ignorance. Now listen. But when you say I want a cup of tea, I want to be in relationship with that person, you express I want in the form of the kleshas, right? These things such as aggression, passion, jealousy, or arrogance. So I want does not allow you any space on reflecting on your surroundings. Did you get that? When you say I, you can get present to your boredom, your unfriendliness towards yourself and others, the fact that you don't know anything or you don't know yourself. But as soon as you couple I with I want, all of that uneasiness goes away. Now you want something. You have desires that are going to drive you outside of yourself. And that allows you now no longer to reflect on your situation. Right? So again, what I find going on a Sunday morning, you know, I'm surprised so many of you come back, is that we are in a process of deconstruction. So in order to be free, you have to get rid of what's blocking you. You have to take that leash off. And in the process of taking the leash off or peeling back the layers of your self-imprisonment, you're going to have to then come to directly look at the uneasiness, the not knowing. And it's going to come up. And I can sometimes feel, you know, the tremors in the space and the uneasiness and the shifting in the seats and everything else going on. And just, again, like I had said at the beginning, breathe through that. It's okay. You know, in the teachings of the Bible, when the Christ consciousness is going to emerge on the earth in us, it's oftentimes referred to as the birth pangs of God, right? That we're going through a birth. And so we're going to feel the tremors and the convulsions and the contractions. It's okay. Do your Lamaze breath. Let all of this come up, okay? So let's get into that story about Bill Thetford for a moment. So if you know about Helen Schuckman's channeling or receiving A Course in Miracles through the voice of what has been referred to as Jesus of Nazareth, Helen had this living relationship with the voice. And so if things would come up, in this case, like Bill's depression, she would oftentimes ask for the insight of the voice to comment on what's been going on with Bill. And that's what we get in Cameo 22, where Bill has this entry within his journal that says, great difficulty in getting up, feeling of generalized fatigue, etc., as continuation of previous depression. Found difficulty in changing this mood state, but improved as day continued. And then it's commented here, though Bill is aware of feeling depressed, it is easy for us to imagine him being surprised at how Jesus, through Helen, explains this depression. This is Jesus' words now through Helen. He is in a very deep sleep and much more resistant to waking than you are. The major problem with him is that his is a passive resistance, which implies a giving over of will. This always induces a state of resignation and therefore depression. Tell him that no one can resign from the sonship since membership is not optional. In other words, sonship is the Christ being that we all are. Right? Membership isn't optional. We are this forever. Right? We're divine beings in a divine family. He has been looking for someone to take his will away because he thought it was the cause of his trouble. Since the Course has placed such consistent emphasis on will, and since he agrees with the emphasis, his past adjustment is threatened. That is why he could not sleep. His past came to haunt him because he is giving up the belief in ghosts. Tell him again not to be afraid of ghosts and remind him that he has no past. The return of his will is what he wants. No one can accept it but himself. So notice then, Bill is having this dilemma with the spiritual teaching. On one hand, he knows that it's going to be empowering his will as a spiritual being, and that his will is what he manifests with. It's his divine spirit. And at the same time, because of his guilt from his past, he can't face himself. So he's at this crossroads, and he's torn. And so his way of adjusting to the pressure of wanting to be free, right, off the leash, and being afraid to look at how to take the leash off, his adjustment was to resign, get into depression, because it feels like it's just hopeless to ever look at myself and be free of what I know is lurking down in the basement, right? These ghosts. Now, it's really a great comment that the compiler of this book brought in here, which goes like this. This brief message gives a novel explanation for why Bill is more depressed than usual. It begins by saying that Bill is resistant to waking, more so than Helen. Yet, unlike Helen's upfront resistance, she was a firecracker. His resistance is passive. It does not appear to be an act of will, his resistance. Rather, it seems to be a fact of his nature, beyond his control. As such, he has become resigned to it. In his eyes, he is constitutionally unable to awaken. And that's that. That's just who I am. There's no point in trying. Right? This conclusion may be depressing, Yet the whole situation is an illusion that Bill himself has erected. The root of this is that he had decided that his will was the cause of his trouble. Clearly, his will had done things in the past that he regretted, which explains the reference to being haunted by the ghosts of the past. He thus voluntarily gave his will over, pulled the plug on it. His will had offended him, so he tried to cut it off. As a result, he now apparently has no will. And that means he seems to have no strong desire, no drive, and no real power of choice. Yet these are the very things he needs if he is to wake up and remember that he is a cherished member of the sonship. To be resigned to having no will, then, is really an attempt to resign from the sonship, right? To ignore your existence, ignore your being. Yet no one can really do this, Jesus says, since membership is not optional. And then finishing here with Bill's story. In his message through Helen, Jesus agrees with this and makes it more specific. What is surfacing in Bill is specifically his will's past misdeeds. Now that his will is rising from the grave, the ghosts of his past sins are rising with it, coming back to haunt him, so that his sleep is now disturbed by a restless conscience. Right? Part of the journey, my friends. You're going to have to confront your past. But remember, in the same section, the real you has no past. You're free of that when you work through this material, this garbage that you've been keeping in the basement. So one of the things that has us show up resigned, depressed, bored, numb, cut off, these are all ways of defending and protecting ourselves from having to look at ourselves. It is a willful denial or an ignorance in the spirit. Okay? So I thought I'd pass that bright and happy message on to you this morning. You're full of garbage. You're garbage. All right. Now for the good news. This is again from A Course in Miracles, and he says here, kind of playing on the biblical theme, the Lord is with you, but you know it not. Yet your Redeemer liveth and abideth in you, in the peace out of which he was created. Would you not exchange this awareness for the awareness of your fear? Because that's what we're doing here. It's an exchange. And then Jesus goes on to say this. When we have overcome fear, not by hiding it, not by minimizing it, and not by denying its full import in any way, this is what you will really see. The divine light within you, the joy, the power, the freedom. But you have to look at what's blocking it, not minimize it, not deny it, not avoid it. You cannot lay aside the obstacle to real vision without looking upon it. For to lay aside means to judge against. If you will look, right, at the I, the me, the Holy Spirit will judge and will judge truly. He cannot shine away what you keep hidden, for you have not offered it to him, and therefore he cannot take it from you. So remember, by always getting into an I want way of life, where it's always chasing after the next desire, the next pleasure, the next stimulation, that is a way of not giving it to the Holy Spirit. It's a way of trying to protect yourself. But that aching numbness and resignation and depression will come back. Can't get rid of it that way. You have to look. That's why he says at one point, pain thresholds may be high, but they are not limitless. Eventually, we have to come to the fact that we can't deny that we're members of the sonship. We can't deny that we are divine beings, and will never be satisfied outside of a state of grace, ever. So look, don't run. And then he says this, and this is a great plug for our Monday night ACIM class, which meets right here tomorrow at 7:15 p.m. This is Jesus talking here. We therefore are embarking on an organized, well-structured, and carefully planned program aimed at learning how to offer to the Holy Spirit everything you do not want. He knows what to do with it. You do not know how to use what he knows. Whatever is revealed to him that is not of God is gone. But you must reveal it to yourself in perfect willingness, for otherwise his knowledge remains useless to you. Surely he will not fail to help you, since help is his only purpose. Do you not have greater reason for fearing the world as you perceive it now than for looking at the cause of fear and letting it go forever? And then finally here, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against love. So that's where the direct looking goes. You calm your mind, you get silent. And then what will naturally follow is you'll begin to feel whatever's arising that's coming up for re-examination. Old memories, old ways of being, relationship dynamics, physical pain and illness. All of this will come onto the screen of your mind when you're silent. And then with deep insight that will be cultivated over time, you'll begin to cut through the illusion of it. And you'll begin to see that this was the block to love's presence. You can then give up your investment in these things. And the energy that they have in your mind when you're ready to give them up gets put back into your own bright awareness. You're no longer using the energy of your mind to carry these family heirlooms and garbage around with you. That energy then gets brought back into the brightness of the now, not keeping you chained to the past. All of this is just verbiage until you do it, until you see it for yourself. I can only point the way, and the finger ain't the moon. And then finally here, it is not necessary to seek for what is true, but it is necessary to seek for what is false. Every illusion is one of fear, whatever form it takes, and the attempts to escape from one illusion into another illusion must fail. If you seek love outside yourself, you can be certain that you perceive hatred within and are afraid of it. Yet peace will never come from the illusion of love, but only from its reality. Now, did you know that this service was going on till 11 o'clock this morning? We'll take a bathroom break in a moment. I got to finish with this, because this is where it gets really practical for how we live our life in relationship. So he says, recognize this, for it is true, right, that you cannot seek for love outside of yourself. He says the special love relationship, right, these transactional relationships that we're trying to get our pleasure first through the agency of another, through the body of another. These transactional relationships, they are an attempt to bring love into separation. And as such, it is nothing more than an attempt to bring love into fear and make it real in fear. And therefore, love will never be found in such relationships. Okay. So on that happy note, the blue bag will go around. I'm open to your thoughts, questions, ideas of any kind. Dave. Arjuna, yeah.
And he's instructing him, and he's telling him that the way to overcome karma, the cause and effect, is to get into selfless service.
Mm-hmm.
That way you kind of eliminate, both extremes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also said, and then in self-realization, he said, then there's also meditation. And he kind of said, you might want to prefer meditation because it's a quicker road to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of thinking, in accordance to what we're talking about today, like the self and the knower and the feel.
Yeah.
He makes that clear.
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point. So the self that we normally identify with, the ego self, gets seen through in meditation, right? So that's one method of spiritual awakening where you, like we've been saying for the past hour, you begin to see through the fact that you're not the me you thought you were, right? Big freedom there. The leash gets taken off. And then the other form of yoga that you bring up, karma yoga, is you actually act within the world, you act in your relationships as the selfless self, the soul, so that you're not looking for what's in it for me. This is actually an act that serves the divine. And when you show up that way in selfless service, nishkama karma, desireless action, you no longer are looking for payoff for what you're doing for somebody else. And what ends up happening, because remember, the me is your nightmare. That's why you're not getting what you want. You're trying to get it for the me, and the me doesn't exist. It's just a tormented idea. So when you get the me out of the way and you act with love for others in service, you are then met with love from others in all kinds of ways, right? So that's where you begin to realize that it feels, again, when you're listening to this at the start of the journey, it feels like you're getting stripped down. And it's just this path of negativity where it's like, who wants that? But what you don't realize is you're getting rid of your disease. And then the health and the strength and the joy comes in. So it's like you realize now, after you've gone through that surgery, that you're healthy and whole and your relationships are joyful and love is present. Like that's a lived experience, right, Lee? And so this becomes the draw. What makes you aspire is that deep down you know this. And you'll start to do these practices like you mentioned, Dave, because they bring you what you truly want. Yeah, great. Bless the offering. we charge this with the intention that it bring blessing into the world in whatever form this money may take, and so it is. Amen. Any final thoughts? Good. Let's rise, seal the deal. Resting within the quiet of the heart, feeling the spacious presence of this moment and nothing else. And as we let all illusions evaporate from our mind, we come to the realization that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. All right. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time.